There are silences that hurt more than any words. One day, without realizing it, your children stopped calling. There wasn't a big argument or a visible falling out. The contact just became occasional, the conversation formal, and the phone stopped ringing. You start to wonder if you did something wrong, if you could have been a better mother or father, if the love you gave was enough. But deep down, what really hurts isn't the distance itself, but the feeling that your place in their life has faded away, as if it never existed. What do you do when love seems unreturned, when the home you built becomes just a memory instead of a presence? Many people live with this wound in silence, carrying a mix of sadness, guilt, and resignation. Some try to fill the void with constant messages or unnecessary favors, hoping to be seen again. Others close themselves off, harden their hearts, and say they no longer care. But both paths lead to the same place, more loneliness and less peace. There's something deeper to learn here, something not about changing your children, but about transforming yourself. From Stoicism and psychology, there is practical wisdom to regain balance, heal the wound, and learn to love again without pain. Because peace doesn't depend on what others do, but on how we respond to what we can no longer control. If this is your first time here, my name is Gabriel. Over the years, I've walked alongside many people through processes of forgiveness, letting go, and emotional rebuilding, especially in the later stages of life when the heart feels more vulnerable yet also wiser. I invite you to stay with me, to listen calmly and with an open heart. This won't be a message of resignation, but of dignity. Stay until the end, because in the final part, we'll share a deep prayer written from serenity and love to bless your children and release the weight of the past. Let's begin. Accepting that your children no longer reach out to you doesn't mean giving up. It means stopping the resistance to what is inevitable. Often, the pain doesn't come from the distance itself, but from the story we tell about it. We think that if a child doesn't call, they don't love us, that if they don't ask, they've forgotten, that if they don't come back, they no longer need us. But mature love isn't always expressed through presence, and sometimes silence is simply another way of walking one's own path. Stoicism teaches that some things are within our control and others are not. Our children's attitude belongs to the second group, our serenity to the first. Understanding this difference is the first step toward regaining peace. Until now, we've lived believing that family bonds must be maintained at all costs, that love is a rope that can't be loosened without guilt. But life moves to different rhythms, and maturity asks us to learn to love without possession. When you stop demanding contact and begin to accept another person's autonomy, something inside you settles. You stop fighting reality and discover that your worth doesn't depend on how often you receive a message. Peace doesn't come from the outside. It comes from that quiet acceptance that doesn't judge, doesn't dramatize, and simply observes and breathes. Imagine an old man sitting in his garden, watching the leaves fall without resistance. He doesn't wonder why the tree is becoming bare. He understands it's part of its cycle. The same happens with children. There are times of distance, of growth, of silence. But the love you planted is still there, even if you can't see it. Accepting distance doesn't mean denying emotion. It means letting it move through you without poisoning you. It's looking at it tenderly and saying, this too is part of the journey. During this process, your mind will try to sabotage you. It will replay old memories, compare, and look for someone to blame. Don't fight those thoughts. Watch them like clouds drifting across the sky. Marcus Aurelius said that we don't suffer because of things, but because of the opinions we have about them. If you change your interpretation, the wound changes. If you stop thinking, my child doesn't love me anymore, and replace it with, my child is living their own process, something inside you softens. Sometimes, accepting distance also means re-examining your expectations. We expect our children to reflect our own choices, to live the way we think is right. But when we let go of that script, freedom appears. And in that freedom, a new relationship can be born, more adult, more respectful. Physical distance can become an opportunity to cultivate spiritual closeness, the kind that doesn't depend on calls or visits, but on a love that asks for nothing. I remember a story I once heard in a monastery. A master had a disciple who left without warning. Years later, when the disciple returned in repentance, the master simply said, "You never left, only your way of being here changed." That line stayed with me because it captures the essence of acceptance. Deep bonds aren't cut, they just transform. Accepting without drama doesn't mean surrendering to emptiness. It means choosing serenity over complaint. It means letting love mature into something wiser, quieter, and more real. When you stop fighting what is, you realize you don't need much to be at peace. And from there, with a calm heart, you can look with compassion, not reproach. That said, there's something else we must release if we truly want to move toward inner peace: the guilt that keeps us tied to the past. Guilt is a shadow we inherit and nurture without realizing it. Many mothers and fathers carry it for years, convinced that if their children have drifted away, it's because they failed. They replay past mistakes over and over again, the words said in moments of exhaustion, the absences, the decisions that now seem wrong. But guilt doesn't heal. It only poisons the present. Stoicism teaches that we cannot change what has already happened, but we can change our relationship with it. As long as you keep punishing yourself for who you were, you won't be able to offer love from who you are today. We've already understood that accepting distance is the first step, but doing so without releasing guilt is like trying to move forward with a stone tied around your neck. Guilt distorts how you see things. It makes you perceive rejection where there's simply independence, punishment where there are only natural processes. Modern psychology speaks of chronic parental guilt, a kind of self-demand that keeps you from seeing the good you also gave. If you only focus on your mistakes, you become blind to the moments of tenderness, sacrifice, and presence that also built that bond. There's an essential difference between responsibility and guilt. Responsibility moves you to grow. Guilt paralyzes you. A responsible mother says, "I've learned from my mistakes and I'm still growing." A guilty mother repeats, "I never did enough." That phrase, "I never did enough," is one of the cruelest things you can say to yourself. It's not about denying what hurt, but about stopping the habit of reliving it. Every time you blame yourself, you reopen the wound and move further away from the peace you could have today. Years ago, I met a woman who, after decades without speaking to her daughter, wrote a letter she never intended to send. In it, she didn't ask for forgiveness or make any demands. She simply shared what she had learned from the silence. That letter never reached her daughter, but it freed her from what her heart kept repeating. Sometimes forgiveness isn't a public act, but a private one. It's writing, crying, and letting your soul cleanse itself without witnesses. Seneca said that no one benefits from prolonged remorse. What heals is calm reflection, not constant self-punishment. Think for a moment, what has guilt done for you so far? Has it brought your children closer? Has it made your heart lighter? Most of the time, guilt only pushes us further apart. If you truly want a healthy relationship, start by making peace with yourself. Letting go of guilt also means recognizing that your children, as adults, have their own paths, wounds, and choices. Not everything they experience is a consequence of you. They too are learning how to be, and in that process, they sometimes get lost or pull away. You can walk alongside their journey through understanding, not through regret. We weren't born to be perfect parents, but to learn to love better as time goes on. When you finally release guilt, you make room for something much more powerful: gratitude. Gratitude for what you lived, for what you taught, for doing the best you could with what you knew at the time. Gratitude doesn't erase the past, but it brings light to it. It allows you to see your mistakes without condemnation and to recognize that even from them, wisdom emerged. And from that gratitude, from that newly born peace, comes the next step: to reclaim the center of your own life, to once again take your place in the world without needing to be sought after to feel alive. When children pull away, many parents end up orbiting around a void. Without realizing it, their entire world still revolves around them: their schedules, their thoughts, their moods. It's as if all their energy is focused on that missing point on the map, waiting for something to change. But when your well-being depends on what others do, you lose your inner power. Reclaiming your center means remembering that your life didn't stop when your children grew up, that there are still paths, connections, and dreams that belong to you. No one can restore your balance if you don't choose to live in it again. In the previous sections, we learned that distance is not punishment and that guilt only keeps the wound open. Now, it's time to turn your gaze inward, toward that space you may have neglected while caring for everyone else. What things did you stop doing because you prioritized your children? What friendships, passions, or projects were left behind? Stoicism teaches that freedom begins when you regain control over your mind and actions. You don't need grand gestures. It's enough to choose yourself again each day in the small things: what you think about, what you read, how you speak to yourself, and how you spend your mornings. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal, "Happiness depends on the quality of your thoughts." And that truth never gets old. Every time you repeat in your mind, "I have no one left," your world dims a little more. But when you begin to say, "I still have so much to live for," a spark that's been waiting for your permission starts to shine again. It's not about denying pain, but about stopping the habit of feeding it. Pain can be a teacher, but it shouldn't be your home. I remember a 70-year-old man who once told me something I'll never forget. "I spent half my life waiting for my children to visit me until I realized I could visit myself." From then on, he began taking afternoon walks, tending his garden, and learning to play the guitar. His life didn't suddenly fill up, but it became his again. Reclaiming the center doesn't erase absence. It turns it into fertile ground for something new. At first, it might feel difficult. You might think it's too late, or that without them, starting over has no meaning. But the soul has no age when it comes to blossoming. Some people discover their deepest purpose only after they've stopped seeking approval. Maturity can be the most fertile stage of life if you stop looking back and start walking toward your own peace. Stoicism doesn't aim to suppress emotions, but to bring them into order. Just as a river needs a channel to keep from overflowing, your life needs direction. Writing in a journal, reviving a hobby, going for walks, cooking for yourself, all of these are ways to realign your life. Small acts of self-love that remind you you're still the main character in your story. You don't need anyone to validate your worth in order to feel alive again. Sometimes, the first step back to your center is as simple as setting your phone down and stepping outside to breathe, without waiting for any message, looking at the sky without wondering who should be writing to you. It's a small gesture, but a powerful one. It declares that your peace no longer depends on someone else's attention. It's an act of dignity and inner freedom. I invite everyone listening to take a moment and reflect. What part of your life have you left on pause while waiting for someone else's love? If this message resonates with you, I invite you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and share your name and country in the comments so I can see where you're joining from. I read every message, and it brings me joy to see this community growing with such diverse and courageous stories. Tell me too, What would you add to this list of steps to heal the distance between parents and children? Now, let's return to our thread. Reclaiming your center not only strengthens you, it also transforms the way you communicate. When your life no longer revolves around what's missing, your words change, and that brings us to the next essential step, learning to speak from calm, not from the wound. When a child pulls away, the strongest impulse is often to speak, to explain, justify, complain, or try to make them understand how we feel. But that urgency often comes from fear, not love. We want to be heard to ease the emptiness, not to truly understand. And when need takes over, words lose their power. Speaking from lack means speaking from the wound, and a wound doesn't know how to build, only how to defend itself. That's why true change happens when we learn to communicate from calm, not from the need to convince. We've already learned that accepting distance and reclaiming your center restore your inner power. Now, from that quieter place, you can see communication in a new light. It's not about saying the right thing, but about saying it from the right place, serenity. Epictetus reminded us that the wise person doesn't seek to be right, but to understand the nature of things. If you speak to your child expecting recognition, you open yourself to frustration. If you speak with the intention of planting respect, even the silence you receive in return can be fruitful. Speaking from calm doesn't mean hiding what hurts. It means expressing it without the need to win. It's speaking without drama, without victimhood, with the certainty that your worth doesn't depend on the response. A peaceful, "I love you and I respect you," is far more powerful than an angry, "you hurt me." Calm is not weakness. It's the highest form of strength, the voice that doesn't tremble out of need, but stands firm in clarity. I remember a conversation between a mother and her son after years of silence. She didn't begin by saying, "It hurts that you never call," but rather, "I've been thinking of you fondly. I hope you're well." He replied cautiously, but he didn't shut down. That door, once sealed by reproach, opened slightly with a gesture of serenity. Relationships aren't rebuilt with arguments, but with quiet presence. Calm has a language the heart recognizes, even when words fail. Speaking from calm also means knowing when not to speak. Not every silence needs to be filled. Sometimes, respect is shown by allowing space, by letting the other come closer when they're ready. In Stoicism, temperance is a key virtue, measuring what we say and when we say it. Before writing, calling, or replying, ask yourself, am I doing this to heal or to be acknowledged? That simple question can change the direction of the entire conversation. Modern psychology aligns with this view. When the nervous system is unsettled, no communication is effective. That's why cultivating serenity before speaking is also an act of emotional intelligence. You can breathe, pray, or write down what you feel before expressing it. In that pause, your thoughts settle, and many unnecessary words dissolve. Calm brings perspective, and from that space, your words become balm instead of arrows. In the end, it's not about speaking more, but about speaking with truth and tenderness. Sometimes a single phrase said without fear carries more weight than years of arguments. I'm here whenever you want to talk. I wish you the best. I love you and trust you. Simple words, but when they come from a heart that no longer demands, they heal. Speaking from calm doesn't guarantee your children will return, but it does guarantee that you will return to yourself. From this place of serenity, a natural question arises. How can we sustain this peace without depending on anyone else? The answer lies within, in a territory untouched by the noise of the world, your inner world. There comes a moment when you realize you can't control what happens outside, but you can take care of what happens within. That's the clearest boundary between suffering and serenity. Strengthening your inner world doesn't mean withdrawing from life. It means learning to live from a steady center, immune to the ups and downs of others' behavior. Those who nurture their inner world stop being victims of silence, absence, or the recognition that never comes. Peace stops depending on whether a child calls or doesn't call and begins to grow from the connection you build with yourself. With that understanding, we see that speaking from calm is only possible when the soul is nourished. You can't offer serenity if you're living in emotional scarcity. That's why this step invites you to reconnect with what's sacred, with what's deep, with that spiritual dimension each of us names differently. Some call it faith, others awareness, others simply presence. The name doesn't matter. What matters is the ongoing practice of returning home, inward. I remember the story of a woman who, after years of feeling forgotten by her son, began each morning with a small ritual. She lit a candle, breathed in silence, and repeated a phrase from Marcus Aurelius. Do not let your mind become a slave to external things. At first, it was just routine. But over time, something shifted. She no longer waited for her son's message to have a good day. She had found her own center again, and from that place, her love became freer. The inner world is also strengthened through simple, concrete actions: walking without rush, reading with intention, writing what you feel, tending a garden, cooking with care. These small gestures organize the mind and cleanse the soul. Stoicism teaches that habits are the armor of serenity. Every conscious action strengthens your ability to remain calm in uncertainty. It's not about escaping reality, but about standing more firmly within it. In my own experience, I discovered that silence is a teacher. When I learned to be still without seeking distraction, I could finally hear the voice beneath the noise, my own. We often think silence means loneliness, but in truth, it's communion with what's essential. The mind clears, the heart softens, and life becomes simpler. There's no greater wealth than being able to be with yourself without anxiety. You can also strengthen your inner world through prayer or contemplation if your spiritual path allows it. A prayer is not a plea, it's a conversation with the unseen, an act of humility and trust. You can softly say, "Guide me to accept what I cannot change, and grant me wisdom to keep loving without fear." Words like these are seeds. They don't change events, but they change how you live through them. Modern psychology agrees that inner peace is not found in control, but in active acceptance. This isn't passivity. It's strength. A calm soul is not a weak one. It's one that has learned to let go without losing compassion. When your inner world becomes solid, you can be surrounded by noise without losing your center, you can hear harsh words without breaking, and you can look at distance with tenderness instead of resentment. From there, with your mind at peace and your spirit renewed, a new way of loving emerges. One that sets boundaries without guilt, protects without withdrawing, and understands without enabling harm. And it's precisely that wisdom that leads us to the next step, learning to set boundaries with love. Loving doesn't mean saying yes to everything. Love, when you've lived long enough, also means knowing where to stop. Boundaries aren't walls that divide, they're doors that teach respect. Many parents, especially later in life, confuse love with endless availability. They believe that if they don't comply with everything their children ask, they're being selfish. But in truth, the opposite happens. When everything is granted, clarity fades and the relationship becomes tangled. Setting boundaries with love means saying, "I love you, but I also take care of myself." It's protecting the bond without giving up your peace. We've already seen that strengthening the inner world gives us the calm needed to act wisely. From that serenity, Boundaries become gestures of care, not punishment. A mother who learns to say, "I can't help you with that," isn't rejecting her child. She's showing that they are both adults, each with their own space of responsibility. Seneca wrote that those who don't know how to set limits in their generosity end up enslaved by it. It's not about hardening your heart, it's about preventing guilt from pushing you into places you can no longer sustain. I remember a simple yet powerful moment. A mother who, for years, only received calls when her son needed money. One day, instead of giving in out of habit, she calmly said, "I can't help this time, but I have faith in you. I know you'll manage." There was no argument, only surprise, and then silence. Days later, her son called just to say hello, without asking for anything. That small change was the beginning of a more genuine relationship. Love that sets boundaries teaches, even when it's uncomfortable at first. Boundaries must also exist on an emotional level. Don't let fear or guilt manipulate your decisions. You can love your children deeply and still decide that you won't be available for their disrespect, their demands, or their constant indifference. That balance is where dignity lives, and dignity, when expressed without pride, is the most beautiful form of mature love. Psychology agrees that healthy boundaries are those communicated with calm, not anger. There's no need to shout or over-explain. A firm and gentle phrase is enough. "This doesn't feel right for me. Let's talk another day. I love you, but I won't argue." These phrases aren't meant to control. They're meant to protect harmony. Every time you set a boundary, you remind yourself that you too have a right to peace. Stoicism teaches that control begins within. You can't control how others react, but you can choose how you respond. That's why every boundary is also a practice of self-mastery. You're not just teaching your children, you're teaching yourself. Every no spoken with love is a quiet affirmation of your own worth. Setting boundaries with love doesn't break bonds, it purifies them. It frees you from the need to please and gives you back the ability to love without fear. And when you're able to hold that clarity, a natural question arises. If I'm no longer the center of my children's lives, what gives meaning to my own? The answer opens a bright new chapter, rediscovering your purpose beyond them. After years of caring for, supporting, and worrying about others, there comes a time when the soul begins to ask for its own direction. It's not about filling time, it's about rediscovering the meaning of being alive. Many parents feel that when their children grow distant, their story fades away, but in truth, another chapter begins, the chapter of conscious freedom. Rediscovering purpose beyond your children means accepting that life didn't end when they grew up. It merely changed shape. There are still paths to walk, lessons to learn, and bonds to nurture, but now from maturity, with a different perspective. We've already seen that loving boundaries protect your peace, but they also create space. That space, once filled with constant worry, can become fertile ground for purpose. Sometimes, without children nearby, you discover time you never had before, silence you once feared, and desires you thought were gone. Viktor Frankl said that meaning is not found by looking inward, but by looking towards something greater than ourselves, a task, a value, a cause. Ask yourself calmly, what can I still offer the world through what I've already lived? What part of my experience could serve someone else? I've met people who found their purpose after 60. A woman who began painting for pleasure and ended up selling her artwork. A man who volunteered at a senior center. A grandmother who wrote a family recipe book for her grandchildren. Purpose isn't always grand or visible. Often it's quiet but deeply meaningful. What matters is that it brings back your sense of movement, of usefulness, of loving life without depending on being needed. When you stop searching for meaning in others, life regains its color. You start caring for yourself with respect, enjoying your body, your home, your reading. You realize that self-love isn't selfishness, it's gratitude. You become more compassionate because you no longer act from emptiness, but from fullness. Purpose doesn't always reveal itself right away. Sometimes it's built through small, repeated actions. But every conscious step takes you farther from sorrow and closer to serenity. Once a man who had lost contact with his son told me, "My task now is to become the kind of person I want my son to remember." That phrase captures the essence of this idea. Purpose isn't about conquering something external, it's about growing in coherence and depth. When your life aligns with your values, every day becomes an act of meaning, even in silence. You can also rediscover purpose in everyday beauty, in the music you listen to, the plants you tend, the honest conversations you share with others. Maturity gives you a calmer gaze. You understand you don't need speed, only presence. In that slower rhythm, simple things regain their worth. Wisdom isn't about doing more, but about understanding better. And as you reconnect with this renewed sense of meaning, your view of your children also transforms. You no longer look at them from the need for their attention, but from the desire for their happiness. You understand that true love doesn't demand reciprocity, it simply offers itself. That understanding prepares the way for the most profound step on this journey, learning to bless and let go with love. Reaching this point isn't an ending, it's a transformation. After accepting distance, releasing guilt, reclaiming your center, speaking from calm, strengthening your inner world, setting boundaries, and rediscovering purpose, comes the most difficult and sacred act of all, letting go, not out of resignation, but out of love. To bless and let go doesn't mean to stop loving. It means to stop suffering because of love. It's looking at your children with tenderness, expecting nothing, wishing them the best even if you're no longer part of their daily lives. It's choosing peace over nostalgia, compassion over control. Until now, this journey has led inward. Each step has been a way of reclaiming your power, your dignity, and your serenity. This final step is the deepest because it requires trust in life, in each person's process, in the mystery that connects even what seems separated. To let go with love is to accept that you did what you could with what you knew, and that now your children must live their own lessons. There is no debt left, only paths that diverge yet still belong to the same horizon. Sometimes letting go feels a bit like dying, because the illusion of control dies. But behind that small death, a new life quietly blooms. When you stop forcing the bond, the energy once lost to worry returns to you, transformed into peace. And from that peace, you can send love without words, a love that neither pressures nor demands. The distance no longer hurts the same, because you understand there is no true absence where there is gratitude. Seneca said that the wise love without fear of loss. That is the highest freedom, to love knowing that everything is temporary, that nothing belongs to us, not even those to whom we gave life. In that recognition lies humility, but also wisdom. The one who lets go with love doesn't renounce the bond. They purify it. Mature love doesn't need physical presence to keep nourishing. It becomes prayer, silent wish, a blessing energy. And now, as an inner closing to this entire journey, I invite you to a prayer, not a religious one, but a spiritual, profound one, born from a heart that has understood. If you wish, you can close your eyes and let the words pass through you. Lord, life, universe, or whatever name my heart gives you, I place my children in your hands. I bless them with love, without conditions, without chains. I release every fear and every guilt that keeps me from trusting their path. May their journey be wise, and may their choices lead them to their truth. even when it differs from mine. I give you my need to be remembered, my desire to control or to fix. Teach me to love without possessing, to wait without anxiety, to understand without words. May my heart remain open, strong, and serene, even when the silence is long. May the peace I've sought take root in me, and from me extend to them like a light that accompanies them wherever they are. Today, I set them free, and in that freedom I too am set free. Amen. Breathe. Stay for a moment with the stillness that follows this surrender. Letting go doesn't erase bonds, it purifies them. Sometimes the greatest love is the one that's expressed in silence, expecting nothing in return. And from that luminous silence, it's time to close this journey with gratitude, with dignity, and with peace. We've walked a profound path together. Step by step, you've released the layers that kept you tied to suffering. You learned to accept distance without drama, to let go of the guilt that held you in the past, to reclaim the center of your life, and to speak from calm. Then, you strengthened your inner world, understood the power of setting boundaries with love, and found purpose beyond your children. Finally, you reached the most sacred act of all, blessing and letting go. Each of these steps wasn't a technique or a piece of advice, but an inner transformation. Because in the end, this journey isn't about how to win your children back, it's about how to recover your peace. I want to thank you deeply for making it this far. Listening, reflecting, and opening your heart isn't always easy, and yet you did it. Every word in this journey has been an invitation to look at your life with compassion and courage. Thank you for allowing yourself to be present, for being part of a community that seeks to heal through maturity without resentment or victimhood. Your presence is what gives this space its meaning. My name is Gabriel, and I dedicate my work to guiding people toward clarity, dignity, and serenity as they navigate difficult relationships, especially in the later stages of life. I truly believe that peace is a choice we cultivate daily, and that each reflection, each moment of mindful silence can be a seed of inner freedom. That's the purpose that drives me, and I'm deeply grateful that we've shared it today. Before I say goodbye, I'd like to invite you to leave a comment letting me know which country you're watching from, and to write this phrase to seal what we've learned today. I bless and let go with love. It's a simple way to affirm that your heart is choosing peace over pain. And if you feel this message could help someone, please share it. You never know who might need it right now. Thank you for staying, for listening, and for continuing to seek wisdom. Ahead, you'll see 2 videos on screen. Choose one and keep exploring this path of growth and serenity. May life find you calm, with a peaceful heart and the clear gaze of someone who has learned to love without fear.